Bharat is a vast and diverse land with a dizzying multiplicity of languages, ethnicities, and traditions. But whether you are in the deep south or far north, east or west, there is something that binds us all together. It is a sense of belonging to this land, to this culture. We speak many different languages. We might believe in different faiths. We might even look very different to our compatriots. But we are all bound together by a common civilizational thread, a rich and a multifaceted thread that stretches to us across many millennia. Or does it? This very idea that there is something called a Hindu civilization has been disputed and argued against by many historians. Today, on our show of Indic Echoes, let us address that question fairly and with an open mind. There is no better person to discuss this topic than our guest today, Shri Pavan Varma, a diplomat, politician, scholar, and an author. Listing out Pavanji's accomplishments will probably take up the entire time we have for this conversation, so let me keep it brief. As one of India's leading diplomats, Pavanji has been our ambassador to various countries. He has been the director of the renowned Nehru Center in London and has been the press secretary to the President of India. Until recently, he was a prominent MP of the Rajya Sabha and also advisor to the Chief Minister of Bihar. He is also an award-winning scholar and writer of over 15 books spanning non-fiction, fiction, and works of translation. And he is one of the most erudite ambassadors of Indic culture, philosophy, and civilization. His new book, The Great Hindu Civilization, is a must-read for everyone who cares about our country and its future. It is with immense pleasure that I welcome Shri Pavan Varma to Indic Echoes to discuss the history of Hindu civilization. Welcome, Pavanji.
Such a pleasure.
So, right off the bat, thank you so very much for writing this book at a very, very critical time in India's history. This is one of the best books that I've read in the recent times. To say the least, it actually moved me, it disturbed me, and it made me think a lot. So thank you very, very much for this amazing gift for every Indian that you have given us. So let me start by asking you, what prompted you to write this book? Was it an idea that was brewing for a long time, or is it because you observed the recent trends and you felt it is a must write?
I think that there is a need, Sharanaji, and thank you for your kind introduction. There is a need to understand that we are the legatees of a civilization marked by great antiquity, continuity, assimilation, diversity, and peaks of unprecedented refinement. Unfortunately, many of us, even the educated, are not fully aware, and in particular, let me say this, I am a Hindu myself. Among Hindus, there is either the lack of curiosity, bordering on indifference about their own civilizational heritage, or often there is a feeling that because Hinduism itself does not demand any rigorous acquaintance with the facts and theories of that religion, that perhaps to live on the surface of being a Hindu, and that's the nature of Hinduism. There's no one book, there's no one church only, there's no one pope, there's no one prescribed mandatory ritual. It's a way of life. So perhaps I felt the need to bring to not only Hindus but to Indians and the world itself this remarkable Hindu civilization, and I wrote the book from that point of view.
Sure. So, what do you see as the repercussions? Because you mentioned the lack of curiosity and on bordering on indifference. What do you notice as the repercussions of this attitude today?
You see, at one level, what this attitude does is that it does not make us authentic legatees of our own civilizational heritage.
Mm.
We produce photocopies where you are tokenistically one thing, but substantively another thing. I am not prescribing anything prescriptive.
Mm.
But I do feel that there should be an element of being rooted in one's own culture without chauvinism or xenophobia. It's important. Secondly, if you don't know, you make the mistake of doing one of two things. One is to ignorantly, simplistically, and inaccurately over glorify the past. Examples that there were airplanes, that there was plastic surgery, that there was in vitro fertilization, and so on and so forth, thereby trivializing the real and legitimate achievements of this remarkable civilization. Or you become dogmatic, not knowing the nuances and complexities of this great civilization. You reduce it to inane simplicities, even converting, in the case of Hinduism, a highly complex, nuanced, inclusive, eclectic, Sanatan Dharma into a series of fiats, where your evangelism is in inverse proportion to your knowledge, which is a dangerous thing. So we need to guard against that. Thirdly, and I can speak about this later as well, you see, today there is an attempt by some people to appropriate Hinduism and to say that we alone know what that Hinduism is, and you will act according to our diktats. It's a narrow, exclusive, often bigoted, upper caste, largely patriarchal, ultra-orthodox, conservative, sometimes violent approach to a remarkable religion. How do you counter it? How do you counter it if you don't know enough about your own civilization? If somebody posits to me Hinduism as a religion which is exclusionary, bigoted, consumed by hatred and violence. If I know that one of the great Mahavakyas of our past is Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti, the truth is one, wise people call it by different names. Remarkable thought, and made thousands of years ago, at a time when tribes were saying, no, there is only one truth. Here were our sages saying, wise people can call it by different names. Remarkable. It's a different worldview. Or, if you are aware that thousands of years ago our sages had the courage to say, Ano bhadraha kritavo yantu vishvata. Let good thoughts flow to me from all directions. Again, a very courageous thought. Because at the time when it was enunciated, nascent tribes about to become states were saying, no, keep out the thoughts from outside. Let us be guided only by what we believe is right. And here we were saying, let good thoughts come to me from all directions.
Right.
Or,
very progressive.
I'm just giving you a random example. When our sages said, another Mahavakya, Udar Charitanam Vasudeva Kutumbakam. For the big-hearted, the entire world is your family.
Right.
When people were saying at that time in comparative civilizations other than India, that we are the only family and outsiders are outsiders, here we were saying the entire world is our family. That shows the eclectic, the progressive, the all-embracing nature of Hinduism, which is why it has survived. If you go back to civilization, this old, you will see that the religions associated with these civilizations at that time have largely today become fossils, antiquaries, or museum relics. And Hinduism has survived. It is Sanatana because it is tolerant, eclectic, inclusive without losing its central unifying thread.
Right. And so you talked about multiple themes. You already mentioned a few, the richness of thoughts. You talked about the inclusivity. Can you tell us a little more about the different themes that connects this whole civilization from ancient times to today?
No, you have to understand that civilizations are a continuum. It's not as if they are compartmentalized. And therefore, his civilizations are like a mighty river that flow. Tributaries join. They become assimilated. They enrich that civilization. And this continuum sees challenges, sees adversity. But somewhere in our flesh and bone, and in the recesses of our mind, the original impulse, the animation of idea, the cerebration of thought, the loftiness of vision, these are part of our heritage. How can we disown it?
Right. Very beautifully said. And you've used this word cerebral in your book as well. So our civilization has been very, very cerebral. And you also make a very nice point. Nothing in that civilization was by chance or by happenstance. This is what you've written. And it hit me hard personally, because today a lot of people, myself included, when sometimes we don't understand a ritual, for example, we're very quick to shun it and say, oh, it doesn't make sense, or we call it superstition. But you've made a very, very clear and bold point saying, no, there's been so much thought put behind it. So what would you tell people or children watching this show on how they can go understand? First of all, if you can clarify about how rich the thoughts of our ancestors were, and how they made everything very, very symbolic. And also, if you can tell us how we can go forward, search for those answers and understand for ourselves.
You see, Hinduism and Hindu civilization is based on deep contemplation. Imagine a forest at the edge of a city where there are thinkers and sages and seers. And what are they exploring? Not God. They are exploring what could be the ultimate truth behind the bewildering plurality of this universe. What are the Upanishads saying? They are a dialogue. They are saying, what could that be on which all this seeming, apparent, visible diversity has its origins in? And they come up with this notion that pervading this cosmos is an energy, a pulsating energy, which is there in living things and in non-living objects, which is in everything, you and me, which is adrisht, unseen, which is achintya, beyond thought, which is akhand, indivisible, which is pure consciousness, undifferentiated, nirvishesh chinmatra, which is all pervasive, ekam ek sarvavyapi, which is supremely intelligent, sarva pratyay darshan, which is complete in itself, purna, and which is beyond attributes, nirguna. And what is that? That's Brahman. And this world exists and does not exist. Exists because of our inability to understand the difference between the real and the unreal. Avidya creates that. Ignorance. And Maya spins her web by which we take the passing, the transient, the temporary as real and push the permanent behind in the recesses of our mind. Now, it's a concept.
Right.
You may believe in it, you may not believe in it. But how much thought would have gone into it? Let me give you another example. The Hindu worldview says there are 4 purusharths. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Dharma, right conduct. Artha, the pursuit of material well-being. Kama, the pursuit of the sensual or the physical. Moksha, the ultimate salvation. Each of them has a place. Very few religions give such a balanced, pragmatic view. And where dharma is concerned, very nuanced, lot of celebration. We have no 10 commandments. This alone is right. We have a moral core. These qualities constitute moral or right conduct. Non-stealing, non-injury, helping others, etc. Telling the truth, etc., etc. But we contextualize it. Now here comes the ideation part. Let me give for your audience and your children an example. Suppose a man is about to starve to death. And he sees a branch of an apple tree coming out from a rich landlord's orchard, from which an apple is hanging. And he is about to die for starvation. If he plucks the apple and eats it, is it stealing or the right to survive?
Right. We would say it is the right to survival, right?
Well, at one level it is stealing. At another level there are reasons which make it comprehensible.
Correct.
Similarly, what you do as right and wrong is contextualized. And it's a very balanced view. Vatsyayan, who wrote the Kama Sutra, on which I have also written a book, among my 24 books, is asked a question by an imaginary interlocutor in the first chapter of the book. Why do we need this book? And he says, there are 4 purusharths. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Each of the first 3, Dharma, Artha, Kama, pursued in proportion, not in exclusion, lead automatically as part of a balanced life to the 4th, which is moksha or salvation.
Right.
You tell me where in the world, in which civilization, will you get such a pragmatic, balanced view of life, giving appropriate place to all the elements that constitute a normal human being's life.
Right. This is so beautiful, and you. Sorry to interrupt, but you explained it very beautifully, and and I really loved how you portrayed or you explained that contextualization of dharma. And now the question I have is, you were talking also about how sages used to contemplate on the ultimate truth, and it is so interesting when I heard you talk. The one thing that struck me was how all of that, that ultimate question is what gave us all the branches of knowledge that we are talking about, be it astronomy or medicine or anything for that matter. So now in the years ancient, how was this knowledge passed on? Because today, the generation we only know those siloed, the siloed knowledge system. So if I'm studying medicine, I have zero idea about, let's say, engineering or anything else. Whereas a person who's studying astronomy only knows about astronomy and nothing about the other things. But what I understand from what you've said is it's all very interlinked. Ultimately, we are trying to answer this, and now people are trying to talk about this interdisciplinary subjects and all that. But can you throw us some light on how this ancient wisdom was passed on generations after generations?
Well, it was done also by word of mouth. It was done by certain institutions like Guru Shishya Parampara, where it passed from a guru to a shishya, who in turn became a guru and passed it on. Some of the knowledge which was originally oral was committed to texts, and texts were taught in great universities, Takshila, Nalanda, Ujjain, Vikramshila, where there was an attempt to teach a subject in the totality of its contexts. Let me give you an example. In one of our texts, or ancient texts, it is stated that a king wanted to learn music. So his teacher said, that's okay, I will teach you. But first you'll have to learn poetry. So he said, I learn poetry. So the teacher said, first you must learn rhythm. So he said, I learn rhythm. He says, but then you must learn dance. And to understand rhythm, you have to have some idea of mathematics. To understand mathematics, you must know what numbers symbolize, and so on and so forth. What I'm trying to give you is that knowledge is not in silo. Knowledge is interrelated, and it was taught like that.
Right.
It was taught like that. So this knowledge passed on from millennium to millennium. There were setbacks, and much of it was destroyed. Let me give you another example. Kautilya wrote the Arthashastra on statecraft. Kautilya says in that there were at least 6 schools of political philosophy that existed, of which he is aware before he started to write the Arthashastra. We don't have texts for them. Even the Arthashastra, after the Muslim conquest, the Turkic invasion, was lost, destroyed. One copy was discovered as recently as the 19th century in Kerala. So sometimes heritage have been destroyed. When Nalanda burnt, when Bakhtiyar Khilji burnt it down, they say the library burnt for 18 months.
Wow.
It was so rich in treatises, original work. In Nalanda, there were 2,000 teachers. And each of them had a grounding not only in their subject of specialization, but in knowledge per se. So there's a tradition. Nalanda called the Harvard of Asia. And it has passed on.
What are some of the achievements of our ancestors that we should really take pride for?
People don't know what are the 3 foundational texts of Hinduism. Let me ask you. Perhaps you also, who are so knowledgeable, may not know.
Yes.
They are.
Can you tell us a little more about it and the impact of the Bhakti movement on the civilization as such?
What did the Bhakti movement do? And it is true, you are absolutely right. One of the most
era of globalization, how do you think parents should look at this whole context of, or this concept of talking in English, and also being able to not just talk the native language but also be able to think in the native language? Can you elaborate a little on that?
You see, there's nothing wrong with an international language like English. There is everything wrong if English.
What is it that we as parents do you think should do to keep this civilization alive and probably even add a lot of richness to it again?
When
And then,
schools don't teach what needs to be taught, and parents don't know what needs to be conveyed,